Welcome to the Keeping IT Real podcast. This podcast features honest and transparent conversations about what it takes to manage corporate technology and expenses today. Each episode, listen to true and personal stories from IT professionals who are working hard to make sure their business stays connected and competitive. I'm your host, Jethro Castillo, and let's meet our next guest. I am joined by Kent Schumann, the CIO at Printronix, an industrial print solutions provider for countless industries across the globe. Kent has over 2 decades of experience in the world of technology and IT, with a proven background in significant increases in profit, reduction in risk, and successful growth for all his organizations. Kent, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So other than tech, what kind of fills your life? What do you like to do in your free time?
It's all about my family and my kids. I have 5 kids that are all teenagers going into either high school, college. We even have an exchange student, so I got 6. And so it's all really about them, whether it's making dinners and eating dinners of family dinners at home, or us. We went to Yosemite recently. It's across the board, but it's all family.
Oh, I love that. You said exchange students. Is it like a yearly cycle?
Yeah. Actually, last year we had a girl named Ina from Norway. In fact, so my wife and I are going to Norway to visit her and her family this year. She was with us last year. And this year we actually have an exchange student named Amanal from Spain. And next year, a girl from Japan is coming to join our family. So she'll be next year the same age as my youngest daughter and going to high school with her.
Wait, that's kind of cool. I studied abroad in Copenhagen for just a semester, and I had a host family. And to this day, we still keep in touch. And so having that sort of relationship is really cool. It also gives you a home in different parts of the world that you wouldn't have had before, right?
Yeah, so it's very exciting. My wife kind of, I'll be honest, pushed me into the idea. I thought there's enough stress and things going on with just our big family as it is, and work and everything else. But I'm really glad that she did, and so it's really good. In fact, she's even getting involved with the exchange organization more to help facilitate exchanges for other families as well.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. I'm a huge believer in studying abroad and having those authentic experiences with the family, right, rather than living in an apartment. When I went to Copenhagen, there was a lot of people who lived in the apartment with other American students. So I was like, oh, so you guys are still doing American life just in a different country? And it was very important to me to be in a household, experiencing the culture and stuff like that. So I think that's really awesome. Well, thanks for starting the podcast unrelated to tech. We'll jump into tech now, because I'm sure that's what the listeners want to hear. How did you exactly get started in the world of IT?
Well, many years ago, we won't count how many. I actually started coming out of college on the supply chain side. I was in purchasing and inventory management, kind of by accident, just kind of working my way through college at the time up at UC Santa Barbara. And they had this thing called an MRP system, and I was the only one that seemed to be able to understand it. So I kind of took it under my wing. And then there was this thing called the network, and there was, technologies, NetWare at the time, if I really date myself by mentioning NetWare, and eventually Microsoft networks and email and all these different fancy things coming about. So I then progressed into a full technology focus for most of the last few decades. But my heart has always been in supply chain operations and things like that. I'd been certified in it long ago, and even kind of capstoning it recently with some additional learning and education.
Awesome. Well, what's your favorite part about working in IT? And I guess if supply chain is kind of your bread and butter, and you said, you're kind of capturing, but what do you do to try to lean into that as much as possible?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's my favorite part is really just the problem solving, right? It's I love IT as us as kind of puzzle, and solution solvers or solution providers, right? And especially as we get into more than just the basic desktop supports or fixing a computer when it's broken, which is a very reactive focus, to be much more forefront on, okay, how can a process be improved? And to take that both from the human side, the process side, and then especially adding this heavy dose of technology that usually makes processes so much more, effective. And so it's really getting involved in that. That's what I love. I love going in and analyzing a process, making it better with a huge dose of technology, but just also good old fashioned process improvement and human training.
Yeah. When you kind of developed your career, Was it always like that? Were you always, there are problems that I want to solve, and and people I want to help? Was that always kind of the driving factor of where you went in your life, or was it not that?
It was. I definitely was at the. It definitely was at the start, and I would say I almost took a little bit of a diversion in high tech in Silicon Valley for a while, running technology consulting organizations. Still, again, problem solving now for customers. There was a heavier tech focus, less on supply chain, but I got back into more IT and tech focus of supply chain companies in the last, say, decade and a half.
Cool that you kind of came back to what was home to you, if you will,
Yeah.
in terms of a career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and every IT professional is aware of this. It is not probably the fastest sort of in terms of change and how many things are coming into the world of tech. There's nothing faster than tech. It requires you to be a constant learner, right? Because what is true today might not be true tomorrow, and so you always need to be up to date. Especially since bad players and bad guys are staying up to date and are using things really, really well. And so, how do you kind of keep up to date so you kind of know what's in the world of tech, so you're able to apply reasonable solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's hard, right? There's so much information out there. It's really, I take the approach of a little bit of everything. I've definitely taken some more formal approaches in the last decade. Kind of reestablishing myself with credentialed aspects, right? Going to ISACA for audit certification and maintaining that, because I watch a lot of the 1 hour webinars on the latest topic, because I need to do that anyway to get my CPEs to maintain the certification. But it really helps, again, get fresh perspectives. The hardest part is whether you get an hour's worth of knowledge out of that or just 5 or 10 minutes. But those nuggets in those 5 or 10 minutes worth it can be really valuable. So just staying on top of watching a lot of it comes from product vendors, which you have to take with a grain of salt at times. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it comes from just other people like myself that step up to share information. So ISACA for audit, ISC squared for security, gone back to APIX or ASCM for logistics, transportation, distribution knowledge. So just kind of going the semi-formal route of certifications, the trainings, and the upkeep necessary has really kept me very kind of well informed and up to date. And then I'm a voracious reader of news and published articles and things that come out. So that's that. I just kind of try to devour everything.
You said, you learned a lot from people and especially product vendors. And then you said, take it with a grain of salt. How do you go about trusting, I guess, or knowing that these people are saying things that are relevant to you and things that you take with a grain of salt and don't actually heed or focus into? How do you know the information that's coming to you is accurate, good, and something that you can act upon?
Well, I mean, in my case, since I have enough experience and foundational knowledge under my belt that you can kind of piece together the core pieces of, hey, we're approaching that, X plus Y equals Z. If you know from historical that X and Y don't make anything like a Z, you can question it much more easily. So some of it is just the learned and foundational knowledge over the years. And the rest is then kind of comparing it. When you take in a piece of information and it sounds like the best next thing since sliced bread, and just comparing it against what you hear, even if it's the next vendor. I mean, getting competitive information from different vendors. And I'm tend to be very blunt and very transparent, even when I'm dealing with product vendors, to just say, hey, look, I've seen this, I've heard this, or this is even how much this costs elsewhere. Tell me why I think it should be different, or why you feel differently about it, and make them defend themselves. It's kind of a very interrogatory kind of approach.
No, yeah. I think that's totally fair, right? Especially when you haven't established that trust yet. Show me that you know what you're talking about. Exactly. And we'll be able to go from there. Like you said, you have a lot of knowledge. And so when you hear those things, you kind of have that foundation knowledge really helps you vet those sorts of pieces of information a lot more easily. With that being said, what kind of excites you? And then at the same time, what kind of concerns you about the new sort of things in IT and tech? Anything that you are looking out for in general?
Yeah, well, the answer is going to be the same for both. And it's probably pretty common these days, which is AI. I'm very excited about AI, and especially as it lays on analytics. I'm a big proponent. I've been putting in analytic systems for companies this last decade that have been hugely impactful for giving insights and helping the company see what's happened in the past, learn from the trends in the data, and make future decisions and choices, right? I'm a big believer in action-oriented data. So it's not just data for the sake of having a big report on my desk to sift through, but to be able to get to the nuggets of information that will help me or another department make better decisions in the future. And AI has the potential to do that immensely, to spot the trends and aspects that we wouldn't otherwise know about and find, or at least it would take us a lot longer to find them. At the same time, that AI is also my biggest concern because, again, with some of the education I've done, I was fortunate. My company put me through an AI course through UC Berkeley recently, and just learning even that and the details of what is really entails to properly build a data set for AI to learn from, and that you have to have some idea in mind of what's gonna come out of it, what's expected for AI to be able to answer. And so these large scale generic AIs that the most common these days, that we see in the news. The question is, what are they trained on, right? And how do you train them, and how do the average layperson, know to trust the data? So that's it's a huge concern because there's going to be an over reliance on it. There already is to some extent. We over rely on things. If it comes across our screen, there's far too many people still that just accept things because it was printed on a screen. It must be real. It's a real danger with AI making that seem even more valid.
Yeah, for sure. And I like how you mentioned training and education. A lot of focus, in my opinion, I think more focus should go into education and training, especially with tech. I think a lot of times, I forget who said this in one of my episodes, but they were like, we're still trying to keep up with the technology trends while also trying to right size what we already have. Like, I don't even think we've untapped the entire potential of the software we bought a year ago. And already we're looking at new pieces of software. And so it's kind of that really stressful, strenuous balance of, especially after COVID, right? Where suddenly we had to buy a lot of tech and a lot of IT to kind of accommodate for all of those changes. And now we're, years away from it where we're able to go, wait a minute, okay, now the finance team, the executives are telling me I need to now cut down all the costs that we really spent a lot more on, but I also still have to look ahead. So how am I going to cut these costs while also asking them for more things? I imagine, I don't know if you can and we'll transition into your IT team with this question, but I wanted to know if you had any thoughts on that sort of dilemma that might be happening in the IT world.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big challenge. I mean, at Printronix, unfortunately, one of the challenges we have kind of leading into that is, we've had some of a downturn, and it's been a known downturn. It's been a little bit bigger than our company was expecting in the last year or two. And so we've had to do some serious cost cutting. We've had to do some reductions in force. Very, very painful exercise. And so everything is on the table. I mean, if we're having to occasionally cut a position and that affects, someone's livelihood, clearly we're also looking at all the other expenditures we have of, when we're spending on project management software, what we're spending on ERP software, what we're investing in for analytics, because every dollar counts. And it's tough, but it makes us, in some ways, it's a good exercise, a healthy exercise for a business, because it's very easy to get complacent and overbloated of, every piece of, software or service that comes our way. It adds some value, so let's grab it, right? But I've always been fairly economical with my IT spend, because I just really look hard at what is the ROI, what does it really bring, and make sure that the dollars make sense. That can be hardest on the security front, because the ROI on security is very tricky. It's so important, but it's like buying an insurance policy, right? And so spending dollars to avoid a future damaging event happening it's very hard to monetize, but it's so critical. And so that's probably one of the toughest decisions as CIO or CISOs that we make, is our security expenditure. Unlike others, I can put ROIs on analytics software, on ERP software, because I know the productivity gains will come out of it. Security, a little bit tougher.
Yeah. And cybersecurity is always huge. It's always been a big thing, but I feel like it's been a hot even hotter topic because of AI and all the breaches that are happening and stuff like that. And so again, I think it leads me to another question, which is cybersecurity is important, right? You need to do that in order for the company to be secure and the data to be secure. How do you balance the need for security and the need to innovate? How do you ensure that you can do both at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just we in IT have to be able to, walk and chew gum, right? So some of it is just the basic of, well, you got to do more than one thing. You can't be solely focused on, the heavy duty security guy locking everything down. I used to joke years ago and still occasionally do, but especially back when it was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was even harder to justify some of the security expenditures because it was such a new thing. And I would say, well, look, if you want to truly secure computer, secure network and business from a technology perspective, let's shut all the computers down. Just turn them all off. That's the only way you can secure them. And so since no one wants to do that, so to see the productivity that comes out of having them turned on and doing the things they're supposed to do, then you have to ask yourself the next question. Okay, well then how do I protect them? What do I do? A lot of it just comes down to assessing the organization. That's where I think if there's any advice I'd give to someone newer in the field that's focused on security, whether a general CIO or someone going up the security ranks, is you really do have to look at your organization. You have to look at the risk profile. You don't have to spend six figures to hire a consulting firm necessarily to assess it for you, but you need to sit down and just rationally talk to your rest of your executive team and your leadership about what are the risks and where does our company fit. Not every company has the same brand needs of, say, a Pepsi or a GM, of worry about brand damage. Not every company has the same technology risks depending on where their online presence are, what their systems are, what they need to get done. And so there's no one size fits all security approach. And it's really important to remember that as you talk to vendors, as you look for new solutions, as you implement training and internal aspects to really make sure it's appropriate for what the risks are to your organization and which risks you actually feel you need to mitigate.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I introduced your company and you a little bit, and I kind of want to give you the floor to explain that a little bit better. So tell me about your IT team and Printronix. How long have you been there? How many team members are under you? And then ultimately, what's the size of the entire organization that you have to support?
Sure. I've been with Printronix for a little over 2.5 years. And I came in as our global CIO and still am in that role. I've actually taken on a little bit of operations roles as well. As I mentioned earlier, we've had some challenges and we've had to do some reductions in force and kind of rejigger a little bit our organization. I have a fairly small team. I've only at the moment after our reductions about 10 people. It's a pretty small group. We have only about 300 worldwide, though we run a global company in many, many countries. I have staff in Malaysia, in China, in Europe, as well as here in the US. And we deal with our product going to literally almost every country in the world, but we're doing it from a fairly small footprint. And I've run larger IT organizations in the past, but this was really my first foray into a truly, truly global company with multi-currency, multi-language, and so it's been exciting from that standpoint. The challenges we have is we're in a print market, even though industrial print, meaning print in the industrial space, not the front office copier or anything like that we're used to that people hardly print to anymore, but ones that are used for, printing multi-part invoices or, even the sticker that goes on the new car or production line paperwork that is pretty crucial and critical to process flow. That's what our printers are used for. Highly reliable, highly industrial, but those are still declining as well. A lot of them are going electronic. Hey, I've done many initiatives myself to eliminate paper in printers. And so I don't begrudge anybody that's doing that, but ours provide a lot of value in the places they do. But it's declining. And so we've had to adapt to how we're addressing a declining market. And we've entered into some new places with some new print capabilities, and we're looking at some others expanding in some new areas that I can't discuss. But it's interesting. It's an interesting place to be. I've enjoyed the time so far that I've been here working on it, and I'm hope we can actually we're successful in what we're trying to do and turn it around and grow it back up again, which is our goal.
Yeah. Well, what does your day-to-day look like exactly? Especially, since you said, the labor force, you've kind of had to cut a little bit and you've had to take other things on. So what do you as an individual, what does it look like every single day?
It's a little bit of everything. There's no kind of no 2 days are alike. One day I'm talking with our team because there's an EDI problem going on, and trying to help them troubleshoot and solve it because we just need to get it done quickly. To looking at our e-commerce and how our e-commerce is set up and what we want to expand on our e-commerce. We do a business to business e-commerce. We're not consumer focused for our e-commerce. To looking at our ERP system, and as I think you mentioned earlier in this segment, about that we have so many systems that are underutilized, and even our ERP system, even though it's an older SAP ERP system, there's still a lot of aspects that we don't utilize fully, and that we can utilize features and functions to improve the productivity of teams, to make things more either secure or consistent with how they're handled, and so looking for ways to do that. And a lot of it with analytics, just really focused on. We have a really powerful analytics platform that I've built in the 2.5 years I've been here. There really wasn't much of one before, and really trying to bring as much as we can that way to really put data and information in the hands of all of our users, especially since we have leaner teams. The ability to get to data and good, useful, actionable data faster is really, really crucial because they don't have the time to wade through a million reports or determine a million different aspects of something. We need to present things in clear, concise ways, and our analytics platform really helps a lot with that. So I spend a lot of time on that on the BI side.
Oh, that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, analytics are everything, especially when you're an IT team that needs to convince the finance team or the executive team of certain projects. You got to be like, look, here's the ROI. Here's the data that shows that this will be largely beneficial. And so having that in place, I can imagine, is very helpful when it comes to making actionable data, like you said. Well, I'm curious, and you can kind of go anywhere with this. And it can be a recent project, or it can be a project that you're most proud of. It can be from Printronix, or it can be just anywhere in your career. But what's kind of an IT project that you took on that is kind of memorable, that had good impact, and why did you take it on, and what were your goals for it ultimately?
Oh, that's tough. Which one to pick? Whether I go more recent or some a little bit older ones that really stand out too. Well, I'll go with the recent one, which is we've had a big focus on, because sales are so important to every company, but especially ours in a market that otherwise is in a slight decline. You have to really fight to make sure every piece of revenue comes in, and that you're aware of it. We can plan for it. When you're having some of the cost-cutting challenges we have, that really even the timing of when revenue is going to hit to make sure cash flows there is so important. And so we've, over the last year, been heavily focused on utilizing our Salesforce, our Salesforce.com system to better integrate with that. And so it's really been a joint, like I kind of mentioned earlier, a joint process, training, and technology project where we set out to say, okay, how do we have not had as much accurate future forecasting visibility to know when revenue was coming in, how it was going to affect our cash flow and profitability. We've had generic ideas. We would get business updates, but it was all a bit disjointed and not a simple, easy way to say, okay, yep, looks like in August, we're bringing in this much. It's going to have this much to the bottom line. And tying those two together was always a very manual process. And so what we've done over this last year, we've both kind of rejiggered some of our process of how we're managing opportunities, for example, in Salesforce, everything from just redefining the stages and retraining our sales teams on how to use opportunity management, and just retraining them on the idea of what's a probability for closing an opportunity. And there was a lot of just human training aspect that were really necessary. I was, I don't know about surprised, but it was a really important part of what we did was the human training. And then we tying all that in, and now we're getting slowly more accurate and consistently accurate data about our future forecast opportunities. We're feeding that in through our analytics system directly back into our main budget system, so we can literally see on a month-by-month basis, on a product line by product line basis, where it looks like we're going to be off, where we're going to hit, where we're going to exceed. And so there's no more surprises. We don't have to wait until after the month happens to know this is what's going to be. We can see it coming. And we're just starting to see the benefits, of that. But we've been working on this throughout the last year.
Sure. And, during the process, during the planning and the implementation, what were some things that you think went well? And what were some things that weren't like, oh, I would do that differently now?
I think overall the things that went well was we approached it as it's not just a technology project, right? That it wasn't just about the Salesforce.com's software system. Well, that's obviously a huge piece of it. And that there was going to be a process side of it. There was going to be a training side of it. So I think the thing that went well is we went into it with open eyes, knowing that, setting the expectations of that among the teams, both on the IT side and in the sales, operations, and finance side. And that's really helped to make sure that everyone was on the same page, that we weren't just going to fix this all by putting in a new piece of software code or adding a few new fields, that there was a lot more to it. So that went well. I think the challenge, I don't know if I'd know how to do it differently, but I'll say one of the challenges is dealing with and understanding kind of the historical, sometimes I'll even call it baggage, in terms of defining things. We found through this process that we had a different definition across our different regions, because we operate kind of regionally. We have Americas, we have EMEA, we have APAC, our three kind of distinct regions. That they all kind of defined what we call run rate, the kind of small standard sales that come in that we're not necessarily aware of in advance. They're not opportunities that we close. It's just kind of orders that come in for our products. Just the simple concept of what's the definition of run rate. We spent a lot of time talking about and debating about. So looking back, I'd probably say, okay, maybe we could have seen that coming better. Maybe we could have addressed it better, or some way to kind of get everybody on the page with a definition that works well. I think we came to a good resolution at the end, but it was definitely one of a little bit of a surprise, like how much effort we had to spend for some things as simple as just the semantics, so that we can all be on the same page when we're talking about a common topic.
It makes you wonder, because you said you don't really know what you would do differently. That's kind of a hard thing to foresee, because then you would just do that with every single word, right? And be like, does everyone have the same definition of this word? So you almost have to just run into it, right? And then address it as it comes.
Yeah, so that's why I say I don't know for sure what I do different, because you can't plan for, like, do we all think of the word "the" as the same? We can't parse every word. So this was an important word, though, so maybe I could have foreseen it and headed it off a little bit better, but it was definitely a challenge. I think we overcame it. We'll see this coming year. Our fiscal year just started at the beginning of April, so we're just at the beginning of our fiscal year, and we'll see how all this plays out over the coming 12 months.
So this is, you mentioned that this is a project that really just happened, and so you don't really have the full idea of how well it's going to work out. You have it in theory or in practice, or in theory, and now you're going to put it into practice and see if this actually improves the bottom line, the ROI, just in general.
Well, we know part of it already, because we can already see. We have a visibility of the way we've tied it into our budgetary data, our revenue data, and all in the analytics system. So we have a visibility now in terms of forecasting that we didn't have a year ago. In nice one single screen, filterable by product line, by region, by a variety of factors, not just backward looking, but forward looking. And we know that based on our trainings, that our sales teams have massively improved their understanding and their use of probabilities and of documenting and updating their sales opportunities. So we know that there's improvements. We know the accuracy and the visibility is there. So in terms of how much it translates into bottom line, profitability and cash flow, that still remains to be seen. But we can already see a lot of the benefits, at least visually, that are coming out of it.
Cool. Right. And like you said earlier in the podcast, it's good to have this data. It's good to have all of this. It means nothing, though, if it doesn't turn into action, right? And so that's really the crucial stuff. You have the foundation in place. It's a beautiful foundation. Now it's just, all right, let's maximize it now and turn it into a real business solution. And I guess that is one of the goals looking forward, right? Is seeing how you can turn this into action. What are some other goals and projects moving forward for you, for the organization in general?
Yeah, probably one of the next big ones is looking at our America's warehouse and trying to optimize it. We do use a 3PL for our warehouse. It's not our own facility, but the way we're set up, we pay for things like storage, we pay for handling, and it. Let's just say whoever put it in place in years past, which was not me, didn't necessarily set the process up and the system up as efficiently or effectively as the company really needs. And so really kind of tearing it apart and building it back up of how do we managing our warehouse? Because by our analytics, we've sucked in a whole bunch of the data, how our storage is currently being utilized, how we're being charged for it. And our analytics are saying right now that we actually are probably overspending by about a third on our 3PL and storage costs. And so we're working with our 3PL partner because it was our company's choice to how we've kind of structured this contract to improve that. And looking at, hey, if this little tiny part that we only sell 2 of a year is costing us more than the part is worth for a year to store it there, maybe we need to look at it differently. And so we're changing how we're doing things, passing some things off to partners. That we have a repair partner that can handle our spare parts. We're looking at optimizing how we store things. We're looking at whether we should store things or obsolete some parts. And so it's again holistic. It's not just about the analytics that starts us off, knowing that we have inefficiencies to resolve, but also then everything's on the table in the business to say, hey, maybe some of these products we can streamline and offer fewer, so we don't have to carry as much. But we have to talk to sales about that to make sure it won't impact our bottom line. So that's what is kind of the next on the horizon, the next big project.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, though. You got warehouses, you have locations all over the world, and you have a team of 10. How do you manage all of your assets that are across the entire organization? And then also when you're receiving all of kind of the IT invoices from different countries even, or just across, how do you keep track of everything and have enough time to do everything else?
Well, again, I think, organization size is really misleading these days, right? Because there's so many different functions that we have outsourced. Even take our 3PL. Our warehouse is not our own facility. So really, my IT team is much larger than that because I'm relying also and directing the IT actions of the IT people at our 3PL, right? My team is in regular contact and working with the EDI and IT folks there at the 3PL, making changes, making improvements, getting answers to things. Similarly, for our, we use outsourced help for some of our data analytics, though most of it we're doing in-house. And so it's really, you can have a much smaller, leaner internal organization depending on how it's structured and how you're leveraging those similar resources and capabilities outside. But to fairness to your question, it can be hard. And because we're in this situation where we've had to do some reductions of force, everyone has been very, very open and willing, myself included, to kind of step up and wear an extra hat or two as we get through this, leaner, tougher time. And so it's just kind of the name of the game to kind of keep moving forward.
In this leaner, tougher time, and this transitions into the last 2 questions I'm going to ask you. In this leaner, tougher time, kind of a wish list question, what would you want, if anything, to kind of make this leaner, tougher time a little bit easier, a little bit better?
Can I take the easy way out and just say more revenue? Because more revenue would solve a lot of problems, but we're working on that as well, right? That's why our Salesforce, opportunity management, all that. So assuming I can just snap my finger and make more revenue start pouring in, which solves a lot of challenges. I don't know. I don't know that I know of one thing or one fix. A lot of it right now is just dependent upon the good team we have and keeping, really keeping them the team here and happy and focused. That's the biggest thing, is to try to not disrupt what we have working. The company's been around. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. And so there is a lot of process, both good and bad, but primarily good in place, which is how it also addresses a lot of the things you mentioned, is because there's been processes in place for many, many years to have these things flowing around the world, even as we are leaner and having to, get leaner recently. So I think it's really just the team and keeping our team happy, our team effective, and just doing the best that we can.
To close, and this is kind of just a wrapping up question for you to kind of cover anything you might not have covered. What are some of the things, stories, anecdotes, anything like that, advice that you experienced or learned in your career that you'd like to close to share with the audience today?
Well, I would say especially the biggest advice I give to younger or newer folks in this IT space is, again, try to avoid just wearing that technology hat. It's kind of alluding to what we discussed a little bit earlier, but to reemphasize it, is the business is the focus, right? Technology is a tool. And we need to not be so focused that we think technology is the only tool, or it's only our responsibility to think of the technology part of it. And it's really, really crucial just to to look at these business processes as end-to-end processes, and where there's improvement opportunities, regardless of whether it's human training, whether it's technology, whether it's just redefining a process, is the way that all IT folks should really start and end their days. Because we can't just be relying. Technology is becoming more automated, right? Everything's becoming easier. 10 years ago, and 10, 15 years ago, used to spend a lot of time managing our internal Exchange email servers, right? Which the vast majority of us now is we have a Printronix, and all the companies I've worked for in the last decade and a half gone to, cloud-based, Office 365, Exchange, or other platforms that you don't manage the same things because certain technologies have gotten much, much simpler to manage and or outsource. And so rather than letting ourselves become obsoleted because of that, we need to be ready for both the next technologies, whether it be AI, analytics, or otherwise, but also be much more business-focused partners in the business to help the business move forward, and not just be technologists that sit isolated in our little domains separately.
I love that. What a way to end. So, Kent, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time. I'm glad we got this on the books and we're able to have a good conversation. I love this conversation. And so just want to say thank you for your time, your expertise, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care, Kent.
Thanks.
VCOM Solutions is here to help make your IT projects and day-to-day operations as easy and efficient as possible. If you'd like to see how VCOM can help your organization save time and money, request a demo at vcomsolutions.com/demo. Do you work in IT? Be a guest in our podcast. Go to vcomsolutions.com/keepingitrealguest to sign up. Thanks again for dropping in. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can find us on social media at VCOM Solutions. Until next time.